is Chris Creekmore, Creekmore Realty Group at the coast of North Carolina, and I am joined by my several members that are on the team. And so I see some returning guests to our webinar. Awesome. Thank you for logging on. See some new names also. So we're grateful to have all of you on here. This webinar, just while I've got just a minute before I actually hit the start button, this webinar is going to be a part of this is our buyer series, and we're going to have every second week of the month. And if you go on to, you'll see the websites. If you go on to retire2nc.com or creekmorerealtygroup.com, you will see a list. Hit the events page and you'll see the events of the webinars that we have. But we will, each month, we will have a webinar dedicated just for people who want to learn tips and tricks and things about selling their property. And then this one, which is dedicated for the topic of buyers that may be interested in buying property in North Carolina or relocating it in North Carolina. Jeanette, you just raised your hand. Is there something you wanted to add real quick? Oh, you're just playing with the buttons. That's what you were doing. Okay. Excellent. We got several people on this webinar today. Also, I'm joined by Jeanette, John, Karen, and Margie. They're part of my Creekmore Realty Group team. Very experienced, great agents. At any point in time during this webinar, and I got a lot of information that I'm going to be sharing with everybody, but at any point during this webinar, if you have any questions, you've got a Q&A button. So if you hover down kind of where, the bottom of your screen, a menu bar should open up, and then there will be a button for Q&A so that you can drop a question into the Q&A. If you want to just drop one in there just so that I know that you found it, let me know that you did. Tell me what state you're living in. Some of you I already know, but just so that I know that you found that button. So, let's get started. Yes, Debbie in Indiana, John in New York, Neil in cold Ohio. Yeah. We had snow here, guys. It does snow in the coast of North Carolina. Fortunately, not very much. So my team and I, we were talking, and we take quite a bit of time explaining the North Carolina contracts to our clients when we're going through the progression of identifying property and getting it all the way to closing. And we thought that this webinar might be helpful such that you're not or the viewers of this webinar may not be as confused or maybe as stressed when your agent, hopefully your agent is us, but we understand people who are on this webinar may not have made a decision who they want to help them represent them. But the goal is to inform, educate, and reduce stress for what ultimately should be an absolutely happy time for everyone. So Q&A box is open if anybody has any questions along the way. Yes, this is being recorded. So this recording will also be housed on my YouTube channel at Creekmore Realty Group, and it will also be on our website, creekmorerealtygroup.com, and also retire2nc.com. So just real quick about me, I've been in the industry for about 30 years. And I am a North Carolina native. However, my mom spit me out in Okinawa. I did attend NC State. I am the owner of Creekmore Realty Group. However, this is not my first rodeo of owning a team or I don't own anybody on the team. I just own the name. Okay. So been doing this for a while. I have moved my platform to EXP about 5 years ago. Ever since then, I've iconed every year. Just basically means I do a lot of transactions. My team does a lot of transactions. Last year, we did over 100 transactions. So we say all this just so that you know that you're not working with an inexperienced group of people. I am married, and I'm going to complete the Appalachian Trail at some point in time. So, all right, contracts, what they do and why they matter, just an overview. I can always get granular. We can get granular on anything, any question that you may have on these contracts. All you got to do is reach out to myself or anybody on my team, and we can go over these contracts. But we wanted to give you a nice big overview such that a piece of paper is put in front of you. You don't say, well, what is that? Okay. So let's think about the purchase of property or the sale of a property, but this whole webinar is mainly geared towards buyers. So if you think of the purchase of the property as the tip of the iceberg, getting that under contract, then all these other things under the water, which your agent is taking care of, that's what this webinar is going to talk about. And it's also going to talk about the paperwork, the contracts, the forms, the amendments, the addendums that come along with that. So below the surface of the water, or the big bulk of the iceberg, we're going to talk about transaction timelines, what kind of paperwork goes along with that, communication, coordination. Your good agent will be your quarterback during the transaction, coordinating communication with attorneys and lenders, inspectors, contractors, financial compliance with lenders, and with making sure deposits go where they go, making sure forms are signed when a due diligence check is received. Is it signed by the parties and everybody acknowledges it? Due diligence, your quarterback, your agent will manage all these items during the due diligence, reducing your risk as an owner. And we're going to talk about some forms that go along that may be as a result of what we find when we're moving through the transition of buying the property. Negotiating and advocating for you by helping you with maybe a contractor that may need to fix a door or something like that. And certainly coordinating all the transaction with the attorneys and the lenders. So we have forms for that. North Carolina, although North Carolina is an attorney state, a lot of people live in an attorney state and they think that just because you're in an attorney state, the attorney drafts the contract. That's not the case in North Carolina. We use a standardized set of forms that are drafted by attorneys that work for the North Carolina Realtors Association. So we're going to go through a bunch of those documents such that you're not blindsided when one of these forms may be presented to you. So they document, the decisions in writing and the timelines. And again, we want you to understand what these are, and we're going to talk about them in Creekmore English rather than legal English. So I hope this is beneficial to everybody. So Joanne, right over here, she may not be happy with me for putting this photo on here, but this couple that I helped earlier last year. But anyhow, responsibility, the buyer, what are you responsible for? Respond promptly to your lender. Attend to inspections? Nah, you don't have to. It's good if you do. Your agent can, but you don't actually have to attend the inspections. Make decisions about repairs, review and approve documents, arrange homeowner's insurance, and prepare funds for closing. Your agent's role, this is just a short list. Your agent has got a really long list, but this is just a short list. Coordinate inspections, track deadlines, negotiate repairs, communicate with all properties, conduct your walkthroughs on your behalf, and attend closings with you. Your attorney. So the attorney is going to make sure that there's no liens or encumbrances upon your property other than those that may be of record, public record, like covenants, like easements and setbacks. We'll prepare your closing documents, review title work, and coordinate with a lender, the closing disclosures, and conduct the closings, and certainly record the deed. So there's three basic kinds of agency. You have your seller's agent, which is only representing the seller. So if you go into an open house, and if you go into an open house and then that listing agent represents the seller, and there's something that should not be disclosed to that seller that may hinder your negotiation ability. I just was awarded a settlement of $2 million. I'm flush with cash. Don't tell that seller agent. So mum's the word. Unless you want that agent to represent you, then you would be in a dual agency. So dual agent, buyer's agent. So the buyer's agent represents the buyer exclusively. So, and you definitely want a buyer's advocate for you. I don't care if it's new construction or if it's a resale home or a parcel of land. You want somebody in your corner that knows the market, knows the communities, knows the properties. But that buyer's agent, once you sign an agency agreement, that person is, the sole fiduciary responsibility is to you, the buyer. If you choose to purchase, which I've done many dual agencies, if you choose to purchase property that is listed by the seller's agent and who's also representing you, then anything that the seller's agent may know about credit history, whatever, once you agree to purchase that or have that person as your agent, anything that will harm your negotiations is not to be shared. So this information, again, it's okay to have a dual agent, but know that dual agent also is going to be more of a referee during the transaction. So let's say you say, well, Chris, what do you think the seller will take for the property? I don't know what the seller will take for the property, but I can give you all the comps, and I can tell you what the comps say, but I don't know what the seller will say. The seller says to me, because we're now in dual agency, the seller says to me, what do you think they can afford? I don't know what they can afford. I could tell you that they're nice people and this is how much they're going to offer for your property, but I can't disclose those things. I'm a referee disclosing information that would be on paper. Okay. Again, your Q&A box is open. If any of these things are like, what? Feel free to reach out. Okay. So make sure you have a signed agreement with your agent. Otherwise, you don't have an agency agreement. Okay. So it's not assumed. It's not a verbal contract. It needs to be, an agency agreement needs to be documented. Okay. So there's a bunch of forms. So again, this webinar is to educate and such that when a form is presented to you, you're not completely blindsided by them. So we're going to start with the first form. A lot of people that we may come into our office and we're having our consultation with our buyer, and we say, are you working with another agent? So, I don't think so. I signed something, but I don't know what I signed. More than likely, what you signed was a just basic disclosure that says, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, you understand that there's a buyer's agent. Here's what the role is for a buyer's agent. Um, Dual agency. Here's what the role of a dual agent is, or a designated agent, which is your prerogative to select that if you're walking into a house that is listed by this agent, and then you say, "Well, Chris, I've shared too much information with you. I would like to have somebody um, represent the seller and not you." So, meaning get some arm's length. So that is an option that we certainly can discuss. So real estate disclosures, working with real estate, it's an educational document. It is not a contract. It is not, you are not bound to anything when this is the only document that you're signing. Agency document is different, but this document it's not a contract. Why it matters, it helps you to understand what representation options you have. Okay, so now let's go into a binding contract, which is an exclusive buyer's agreement. So it establishes an agent exclusive representation. I can't work for anybody else. If you told me that you're, I don't know, you're allergic to cat hair, whatever, I can't share that. When is it used? It is used to signal, or it's got to be signed before you start touring homes. According to North Carolina, we're going to get into that. It ensures legal obligation of representation. So there's no gray area. Chris, are you my agent? Yes, I am your agent. And explains each section and answers the questions before you sign. So your agent will walk you through every single item of the contracts. Okay, so I want to go through. North Carolina has reduced the agency documents to 3 pages. Used to be 7. Now it's 3, but let's hit the highlights of it. So when an agent is saying what services are they providing, basically we're putting in there, are we helping you find condos versus single family homes? Are we helping you in a particular location? Chris, I only want you to represent me in St. James Plantation. Chris, I only want you to represent me in Brunswick County. Chris, I only want you to represent me in Brunswick County and New Hanover County. That's what it is establishing. So the buyer's disclosure is, here's your opportunity to say, I, as a buyer, I am working with another agent. Or I am working with a relocation company. The reason we want to know that is because a relocation company is going to demand an additional fee. We just need to know that. Are you working with multiple agents? We don't recommend it. But some people are working with an agent in one part of the county and an agent in another part of the county. Terms of the agreement, most agents will recommend a 6-month agency agreement when you're buying, sometimes a year, sometimes a month. It depends on how good you feel about your agent. Fee for service. All right, it's important to understand that the fee for service is typically it's a percentage. What is typical that a buyer's agent will receive for helping you identify the location, the community, and represent you during the transaction, from the tip of the iceberg all the way through the bottom of the iceberg. Sometimes the agent may require a retainer. I've never done it, but I know that some agents have done that in the past. And sometimes a builder, typically in new construction, will offer a bonus if we help you purchase property in new construction. That has to be disclosed. We're saying all this again such that something has not blindsided you when you're when an agent presents these documents to you. So a fee is not earned until the property is closed, or God forbid, the buyer breaches contract and you're 2 days before closing. Could the agent say, hey, you owe me a fee? Could. Thank God I've never had to ask for that. But the fee is not earned until the property is closed. A protection period basically is if you have a 6-month listing agreement, and then property comes on the market, back on the market that you showed them before or such, then there could be a grace period of 30 to 45 days. Compensation is not fixed. It is negotiable. So it's important that you know that. Your agent will discuss that with you. If you have any questions at any point in time, raise your hand or feel free, drop it into the Q&A box. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about dual agency because it freaks a lot of people out, okay? If you are in a dual agency, okay, the firm represents you fully as a buyer's agent until dual agency begins. Once representation for both sides, the firm may learn information that it cannot share because it could hurt your negotiations. Point being is if your agent knew something, now you're a dual agent, that thing that you shared with me when you were a buyer's agent, that still thing which could hinder your negotiation, now zippity doo-dah, I cannot share that with the seller. If you decide for yourself what price and terms of the offer, you will need to decide. Again, the referee, they will offer you comps and they will tell you what the comps say, but you ultimately will need to decide, which you should make the decision anytime, but you ultimately will need to make a decision on the price and terms of the offer, unless you designate a designated dual agent. The firm will, and then they'll walk that dog with you. The firm will not share your confidential information, such as how much you're willing to pay. The firm will treat both buyer and sellers fairly and help communicate, but not take sides. Once I'm opening the door, I say to my buyer client, we signed a buyer's agency, okay? I'm opening the door, and then I say, guys, this is my listing. So if you choose to have me represent you during the transaction, know that anything that you shared with me prior, I cannot share with my seller agent, but also know that at this point in time, if you choose to purchase that property, I cannot tell you exactly what the price or what the sellers will come down to, but I will guide you through it. And understand that there are pros and cons if you enter into a dual agency. So it's your option, okay? It depends on how comfortable you feel with your client. So, John, you got a comment you want to add to that?
Yes, sir, I do. I started in real estate in 1995 with a company called Help You Sell Real Estate. And with Help You Sell Real Estate, it was all dual agency. So I think I probably closed, I don't know, around 80 transactions while I was with them under dual agency. And here's what I learned. When you represent a seller, that's when you would hope to have a dual agency situation, because oftentimes a dual agency, when you represent a seller, can save the seller some money. And that can be a good benefit to our sellers and our clients.
Yeah.
However, when we're a buyer in a transaction, we never want to be a dual agent. The reason why is because as a buyer, your agent can negotiate and lobby on your behalf for all of the things that you want and champion and back and protect all of the terms, the price, compensation or not compensation, due diligence, all that stuff. Your agent protects you with that stuff. Whereas When you're a buyer, if you go to a listing and participate with that listing agent, become a dual agent that way, you don't have the representation for you. You're not going to have an advocate for you because, like Chris said, it's going to be a mediated situation and no one's going to be advocating for you.
Yeah, it would be an advisory role. But in a guide. But again, it's a referee. So the buyer's agent at that point in time cannot pull out its fangs, if you will, if you're into a dual agency. Good point, John. Thank you. So compensation transparency. Okay. So again, compensation is negotiable. Sellers right now are typically offering 2.5 to 3% for a home purchase. So we try to ascertain that information before we get into a house so that we know what the sellers are offering. Payment is typically coming from the seller, but it can come from the firm. And you have the right to understand that the compensation is negotiable. So work with your agent on what that is and know what the compensation is and how does that impact you. If the seller's paying it, it doesn't impact you. Does not impact you. Okay, but so you can eyeball and you can see where this is on the contract. So this is what's called a cooperative compensation agreement. This is what we typically get from the seller. I'm representing the buyer. This is what we typically get from the seller in advance that says the seller is offering 3%. So you know it. You as the buyer, you know it, you understand it, and then it will be shown on the settlement statement that the seller it's coming out of their net proceeds. If for some reason you sign a buyer's agency agreement, or for some reason, it happens all the time. If you sign a buyer's buyer's agency agreement, and the buyer's agent says my fee is 3%, but then the seller only offers 2.5%, and the buyer's agent is okay with that, you're okay with that, then this is an amendment form where we can say, well, the compensation was 3%, but now it is amended to 2.5%. Everybody's on page, everybody's happy. So this is a form that if you sign an agency agreement with your agent that says that the agent will earn 3%, but again, the seller is offering less, this is an agreement where everybody knows and discloses what it is. Again, if you have questions, drop them in the Q&A box. Or, well, I don't know if you can raise your hand, but drop them in the Q&A box. So here's what we see. I've got Debbie that I'm meeting. I'm going to take Debbie and her husband. They're going to see 5 houses. I'm scheduling those 5 houses. So before I can schedule those 5 houses, clicking basically the button request these 5 houses, up pops this little window that says a participant working with a buyer's agent or a buyer must enter into a written agreement with a buyer prior to buyer touring the property. You can enter into an agreement for 1 day, you can enter in an agreement for 2 years, but an agency agreement must be signed prior to that agent taking you into the property. Just know that this is the things that we have to do in today's time. Again, any questions, feel free to open them up. All right, now we're going to talk about the purchase contracts. So on the purchase contracts, we got a whole slew of those too. So the agency, there's only a couple of forms. Now we've got a whole slew of others. And I'll try and go as quickly through these because I want to try and get everybody in bed and just need another 15 minutes of your time unless you go through Q&A. All right, so an offer to purchase. Think of the offer to purchase as the framework for the entire contract. Somebody dropped something in the chat. Where did it go? We have a question. That was John. Okay. Did I answer your question, John? You put it in the chat.
Oh, yeah, no, Margie took care of it. Debbie had a really good question on the difference between what you're talking about in terms of compensation versus the percentage fee that we're paid. And Margie, I think, did a good job explaining that. Debbie, do you have any further questions on your question? Maybe not, but anyways, that's all that was referenced to.
Okay. All right. So offer to purchase. So think of the offer to purchase as the framework for the entire contract. Okay. So it makes your agent legally binding to represent you as well. Now, also, we're going to talk about new construction in a moment, but new construction contracts are typically written by the builder representative, not our North Carolina standard forms. However, there are exceptions to that. All right. So the basics of the contract, certainly the property description, tax identification, but this part here, we're going to get into the important terms of the contract, the price, the due diligence fee. Let me talk about due diligence for a moment. What is that? Due diligence fee is an amount that you are paying to the seller that is non-refundable, but is applies to the purchase of the property once you move forward and go to closing. It is an amount of money that says to the seller, I am serious about buying your property. I'm not just blowing smoke. That due diligence amount could be $100. It could be $5,000. It could be more. It depends on how many days the property's been on the market, how hot is that property, if you will. Earnest money. Earnest money is refundable all the way up until the due diligence date. We're going to talk about timelines in just a minute. So your agent, your quarterback who is managing the clock, just like in a football game, is looking at the date as we are approaching the due diligence date. If we don't have an HVAC report back in time, we need more time. We either need to extend the due diligence or we need to cancel the contract. And we'll talk about termination. And we'll talk about building deposit. And this also says, are you, well, down here further, actually financing is on another page. All right, so the bottom is, what is the due diligence date? In the state of North Carolina, in this area, due diligence is anywhere from 14 to 21 days. Typically, a settlement date is anywhere from 21 days to 45 days, typically. Again, all these terms are negotiable. Okay, so if I purchase property, I signed a contract in January 1, then deposits are due within 1 to 6 days by contract. Your due diligence date is due day 1, and your escrow is due within 5 days. You want to schedule inspections right away. You want to negotiate the inspection report by week 2, week 3. You want to get your appraisals and your loan. Actually, you want your appraisal back before due diligence date is up. And so the due diligence date, if I was going with 21 days, my appraisal document should be back before January 22nd. Then we're going to do a walk-through closing prior to closing day, get your keys. So what happens during the due diligence and the closing date? Let's say there's 5 items on a due diligence report, and the seller says, all right, I'll fix all 5 items of that. They have that time frame between the due diligence and the walkthrough date to get the 5 items repaired or addressed, fixed or whatever. So it does not have to be fixed prior to the end of due diligence. Yes, John.
One of the things I like to share about this, and I really like about the due diligence, is that there's two times we get to negotiate when we make an offer on our property. The first time we negotiate is when we make the initial offer. The second time we negotiate is in our due diligence after we get our home inspection. And a good agent will be able to take your home inspection and turn that around and renegotiate for either money off the price or a credit based upon deficiencies found in the home.
Excellent. Yes, that is absolutely correct. So when I was referring to the iceberg back over here, negotiations. Yeah, so there's yeah, right over here. Yeah, so not only negotiating on your purchase price, but other items that are discovered during the process of purchasing the home. Thank you. So that's during the due diligence. That's when you're doing your inspections. Your inspections could be home inspection, your homeowners association documents, your septic inspection, your appraisals, boundary survey, zoning, pest inspection, roof inspection, soil inspection sometimes. So that's when you do it. Soil inspections are very important. And here's something also. I don't want you to be blindsided by the word impervious, but impervious is important. That's why I'm bringing it up. So if I am buying a parcel of land in Winding River Plantation and the impervious limitations is 4,500 square feet, that means I cannot block water, shed water from coming over onto 4,500 square feet of that property. So that will include driveways. That will include patios, anything that will not allow water to penetrate. So if you're looking for land, you want to work with anybody on this team here because we all understand the impact of impervious. So need you to know that that's an important part of your due diligence when you're looking at land. So repairs are negotiated. The contract, the actual offer to purchase says you are buying the property as is. However, it also says that you have the right to do inspections. And you also have the right to terminate. Your agent, your quarterback, your time manager will make sure that if there is a red flag, that red flag needs to be addressed prior to the due diligence and terminate prior to the end of due diligence so that you don't risk escrow. Do things happen between due diligence and closing? Yes, they do. But we want to try and minimize that risk. We have a form for the due diligence. We just did our home inspection report. John Hunter, by the way, just so you know, his son, Sterling Hunter, is a home inspector. He does a great job. He just inspected one of the most expensive houses in all of Brunswick County this year. So this form says to the seller, hey, we've identified 15 items on this report. We want you to fix 7 of them. Here's what they are. If the seller agrees to that, then the seller signs the form. We move forward. Your agent makes sure all those things get fixed. Sometimes the seller is 85 years old. They don't have the capacity to get anything fixed. So they say, in lieu of fixing these things, we will credit you $1,000, whatever. So that could be listed on this form or another form. But it's something, again, that your agent is going to negotiate for you during the process of purchasing the property. My man, John.
Sorry to keep raising my hand, but somebody, I think Karen brought up a good topic at our meeting today in that we had a builder tell Karen that she could not have a home
No.
inspection done on her new build. Her client was building a home with a particular builder. I'm not going to
Yep.
say names. And they told Karen, no, you cannot have your own inspection done. And Karen, as a knowledgeable agent, calmly looked that agent in the eye and said, yes, yes, we can. Unless it's in the contract that we cannot have our own inspection, which we did not read, then we can do it. And the agent got back and very humbly and said, oh, I'm sorry, you're right, you can. Now, builders will try to talk you out of not doing a home inspection on a brand new home. My son Sterling, like Chris just mentioned, just recently, 2 weeks ago, we closed a new construction deal with D.R. Horton. D.R. Horton's one of the nation's largest builders and has as much weight to throw around as any builder does. On the third to last day, 3 days before closing, the buyer wanted to have their own home inspection done now that the home was complete. Sterling found 7 items, including the rafters needing to be sprayed for microbial growth. The builder took care of all 7 items, including spraying the entire rafters and the entire exposed wood area for microbial growth. So don't let anybody tell you you can't have your own representation and you can't have your own home inspection done.
Thank you, John. I had a client, a building with a very, very, very reputable builder. They liked the project manager. They didn't want to offend the project manager. I had been watching the construction of the home. I said, look, we're getting ready to have sheetrock added to the house. That way, we're not, after that, I can't see the pipe. I can't see the HVAC vents. I can't see the how the studs are nailed together. So we need to I recommend you do a home inspection. Well, I really like my project manager. Doesn't the builder offer a home warranty? Yes, he does. But I met your project manager. I like him too. But guess what? This is his second house. Second house. So he's a nice guy, but you know what? At the end of the day, he will appreciate the fact that we did a home inspection so that he gets a thumbs up from his boss that there was nothing that was not taken care of. So, and I say this also, if you're looking at new construction, do not fly solo. Do not fly solo. We have seen so many cases where I talked to the builder. I really like the builder, even if it's a national builder. Chris, I already know I want to be there. Why do I need you? We have John Del Judas, who's not on this panel tonight. He can tell you a horror story, potential horror story that he fixed because he was there to advocate for his client. Okay, buyer's deadlines and responsibilities. Due diligence fee is due day one. Earnest money is due within 5-7 days. So we want to complete our inspections during our due diligence period, provide lender documentation promptly, and we want to meet all the approvals for the financing deadline. And we want you there for the final walkthrough. The seller's obligation is to maintain the property in the condition in which you saw it in, not moving the furnitures out and dinging walls. It needs to be in the condition that you saw it in. Provide required disclosures and inspection access, complete agreed repairs by the deadline being settlement date. Now, have we had certain items fixed after the settlement date? Yes, but guess what? We got another form for that. So sometimes, as an example, a window is fogged and the seller orders that window, but it's not going to be shipped and delivered until after the settlement date. That's actually a very classic example. Okay, so when you're looking at the offer to purchase, again, the offer to purchase, this is the framework of the entire purchase of the property that you're looking at. Towards page 12, one of the last pages, here is a list of addendums that could be attached to the contract. If you sign a contract and the house is priced at $850,000, and then after due diligence, you discovered that HVAC is whacked out, needs to be replaced. You negotiate, your agent negotiates that we're going to take $15,000 off the purchase price. Ding, ding, ding. An amendment now goes up. You've got to make sure your agent is checking the box that a additional provisions addendum is now attached. Once you have an attachment to the contract, this box needs to be checked. So the framework needs to be, that box has got to be checked. The transaction coordinator will send it to you so that you can electronically acknowledge that, okay, this is important. So I say this because if you sign an addendum, I want my participants on this webinar, my viewers of this webinar, know that if your agent doesn't ask you to amend the offer to purchase, initially where addendum is added, it could bite you in the end. So make sure that these boxes are checked. Fortunately, that's never happened to me, and I'm pretty sure it's never happened to anybody on my team. But we can't speak for all agents. I can speak for my team. Now, Jeanette just raised her hand, and before I hear what Jeanette has to say, I want everybody to know on this that's watching this webinar, Jeanette is my former paralegal who knows these documents inside and out.
Thank you, Chris. I just wanted to add to the amendment that, and all the agents here know this, not only is it getting the amendment added to the contract, if you're getting a loan, your lender has to get that. If you end up at the last minute and suddenly you've got an amendment, well, it's got to go back through the lender, the underwriter. So that's another critical reason why, the lenders need the amendment also.
It could delay closing. Let's say your closing is scheduled for a Thursday, and you're chasing paperwork, and your mover is arriving on Saturday, and because paperwork did not get approved, the underwriter did not give final clear to close, your mover truck is going to be sitting in your driveway, and you can't move anything in. So, Jeanette, excellent point. That's why I hope this webinar is helpful for everybody, because we want to circumvent any issues. We're hoping that you will use myself or this team to represent you in the transaction. But if you're not, we want you to be informed of what you should be looking for, such that some of these heartaches do not fall upon you. All right, additional provisions. So again, this document, what is the additional provisions? Let's say you want to change the expiration date of the offer, or we want to the septic installation modification. Not run across that one very often. But the main thing that we use this form for is it's also another way to document what the seller has agreed to if you are going to if they're going to fix, I don't know, a pipe, whatever. So additional provisions adds custom terms and addresses unique property concerns such as appliances, septic, HOA requirements. It's used it's attached to an original offer. Again, you want to make sure those boxes are checked, and your agent is going to make sure that you have these additional documents such that there's clarity to all parties in the transaction, the lenders, the attorneys, the the buyers and the sellers. Okay, so in agreement to amend, we see this one quite often. The agreement to amend is, say you want to change the purchase price because of the HVAC needs to be replaced. You negotiate the purchase of the price $15,000 down. So it was $850, now it's $825. So that's something that we look for a lot of times. Sometimes the due diligence fee. Sometimes you say to the seller, we need more time to do our inspections, and you've given them $500 in due diligence, and the seller says, I'll grant you more time, but I want another $500. So that's where you would see that. Or if you need to extend the due diligence time frame, I need more time. There is a document. Again, clarity, 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 clarity. Make sure your agent, if there's a change to any term of the contract, make sure your agent is submitting these contracts to the lender and also these amendments to the lender and to the attorney. That's why we're here. We want you to be informed of what to look for and to make sure if your daughter's best friend is going to be your buyer's agent and she's your daughter's best friend, you feel obligated to her, that's fine. That's good. But you need to be informed so that you can help her along the way too. All right, so amendments so that there's full disclosure and clarity to all parties in the transaction, which includes the lenders and includes the attorneys and the buyers and the sellers. Termination. So you want to terminate. If you're going to terminate, ideally you want to terminate before the due diligence date is up. However, if for some reason the appraisal doesn't come in time, then the appraisal is there's a delta of $50,000, then this is the time to terminate if you cannot renegotiate the purchase price. So again, ideally you want to terminate before due diligence is up. So if you determine that you are going to cancel the contract before the due diligence is up, just so you know, in the state of North Carolina, you can terminate if you got a cold or you stubbed your toe for any or no reason at all. So this form, which is a unilateral, the buyer, am telling the seller, I'm canceling. And you can do that if you do that prior to the due diligence date. If you're beyond the due diligence date, or even if you're before the due diligence date, and the seller says, yeah, okay, I understand it. This is a form that you can use if you're both in an agreement in terminating. And then it also says, okay, my escrow money, it's going to go to who? If you're terminating before due diligence, then full 100% of your escrow is going to go back to you. But let's just say, as an example, you terminate 5 days after due diligence and you appeal to the seller, the house purchase of my house in New Jersey canceled. I just cannot move forward. And the seller says, all right, yeah, I grant leniency. If there's $3,000 in escrow, I'll take half of it, you take half of it. So this is a way it's documenting who's getting what. All right, new construction. I'm going long. I apologize. Nobody's left yet, so I'm hoping that this is informative, but I've only got a few more slides and then we're going to be done. So new construction. This is different from your typical offer to purchase. Okay, although a typical offer to purchase does apply. These new construction documents are for the main reason if the buyer, the buyer, does not own the land, the seller owns the land. This is very important. And also the builder is using their money for the construction, not what we call a construction to perm, or you're paying cash for the construction. So very important to know that. And also, um, yeah, that you are not financing the construction of the property. Again, if you're going through new construction and we need to get granular on any of this, reach out to myself or the team. But know that typically you've got three types of contracts when you're buying new construction. One contract that is presented by the builder and the representative of the builder, or two different North Carolina forms. Okay, this particular form, which is a form that is used when the house has probably not even been started, okay, or the house is halfway along, and then the builder says, okay, yeah, I'll sell the house to you, and I'll give you the option to change all the appliances in the house, okay, which is quite an expense. So this is the form that we would use in that situation. And then we've got trigger events. So again, this contract, this one right here, which was offered to purchase new contract, new construction, which is known as 800T. There will not be a test later. I just want you to be aware of it. The 800T is what we use when the house is barely even started or not even started at all. Okay, so the seller will ask for funds in what we call a trigger event. Okay, so you have your purchase price, you have your initial deposit, and then you have earnest money deposit, and then you have a trigger event deposit. That trigger event deposit may be when you are 3 days after the effective date, or 3 days after your pre-construction evaluation, or upon foundation of the property, or upon notice of certificate of occupancy or rough-in. So these are trigger events. Your experienced agent will negotiate these terms on your behalf along with you and your builder. But this is what this form is designed for. So the other option is if you are buying a house that is just a few days from being completed, and you said to the seller, here, I'll offer you this amount of money, but I want you to change out all the lighting fixtures in the kitchen. Well, that's a fairly nominal thing. That's fairly easy to do that. This is a item that, or a addendum to the contract. So, I didn't put it in here. Okay, it's an addendum to the contract. It would actually be right over, no, I didn't add it to it. There is a line item in your standard offer to purchase contract that says a builder deposit. So let's say the lighting fixtures cost $2,500, and the builder says, all right, I'll sell it to you, but I need $2,500 for the lighting fixtures. Then that's where that builder deposit would go on the standard offer to purchase contract. And it would be noted here. Okay. Common mistakes that we want to help you avoid: due diligence deadline. Your agent is going to manage that clock for you. Don't go buy a car. If you're getting a loan to purchase a house, don't go buy in a car, because then it screws up your credit reporting. Be there for your final walkthrough. Sometimes you can't make it. If you feel good about your agent to do your final walkthrough about it, we do it all the time, but it is best that you would be here for your final walkthrough. If you're unclear about a document, any document, as opposed to just going with blind faith, ask your agent, what does this mean? It's okay to stop and pause and breathe, because we don't want anything to surface at the end. So if you have any questions, I can assure you anybody on this team, on this panel, will be absolutely happy and eager to answer any question. But if your agent is not somebody on this team and they said, we don't have time for that, red flag, bing, 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 going up. Okay, no verbal agreements. Please, guys, dot your I's and cross your T's. Your agent should be doing that for you. Wow. Ran through a bunch of stuff. I hope this is helpful. This webinar is recorded and it will be on my website, retired2nc.com, and also Creekmore Realty Group. I'll show you those addresses in just a minute. Real quick, anybody on the panel have anything they want to add? Awesome.
Well, I can share one thing about new construction, and it's this. Oftentimes people think that, well, why do I want a realtor with me if I'm going to do a build job? It's just going to cost I got to pay a commission, and the builders don't want to work with a realtor, and like, it's going to muddy the water, right? Well, I had a good friend of mine recently. He's become a good friend, but I met him about 2 years ago, and we got to know each other. And he said he wanted to build a home, and I asked him if somebody representing him, and if he'd like some help in that. And he said, "Oh, no, thanks. I've already talked to a few builders. We're just picking one out now." And I said, "Well, there's a lot more to it than just picking a builder. There's a lot of advocacy that can be done on your behalf to make sure that you don't end up paying a lot more for the home than you should." And he said, "No, I'm good." I didn't know him that well, so I didn't push it. Well, we became good friends, and that's the one we just sold over in Avalon. Um, on Avalon. So, anyways, we just closed on his home, and after we closed on his house, we went over to his new home, and he shared with me that the initial purchase price of his home ended up raising by over $100,000 because of all the add-ons and all the different things that the builder said that they needed to do and the different things. And as I asked him a few questions about it, I found out that had he had somebody representing him, he probably wouldn't have had to pay that much more. A real advocate would have been able to negotiate and protect him in those things. And in my opinion, he probably paid about 50,000 more for the home than he needed to. And a real estate commission wasn't even close to that much. So he said when he saw me negotiate his sale and his listing, he said, "Now that I saw how this went down, I wish I had had you represent me on this." And so that's just what I wanted to share.
Yeah, and that's excellent. Well, I feel bad for that person, but um, nonetheless, new construction, please have somebody. You should always have a buyer's agent, or if you're selling, a seller's agent. So you need somebody in your corner. So thank you everyone who has joined us for this webinar. So please, if you have a question, drop it into the Q&A box right now. I would be happy to answer any of the questions that you may have. Again, this webinar is recorded. And did anybody else drop a question in here? Excellent webinar. You're welcome, Debbie. Thank you for the information. You're most welcome. Thank you. Everybody have a great rest of the evening. If you'd like to know how to get a hold of us, again, this webinar is recorded, but we are Creekmore Realty Group, and you can find us on YouTube at Creekmore Realty Group. We've got lots of great videos on the YouTube for all kinds of topics for buyers and sellers, all kinds of things. And we look forward to seeing you on our next webinar, which will be on the 25th. We will have a webinar on the 25th. We hope to see you then.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you. Neil, you're very welcome, and can't wait to see you guys too. Thanks, Neil.